Hello and welcome to the John Ark Show. Today we're going to interview Kenneth Bombace. He is the CEO of Global Threat Solutions, which is a company that provides high-level security services to presidents and politicians, world leaders, celebrities, CEOs, and other VIPs around the world. Before we begin, I want to encourage you to subscribe, like, comment, and follow us. We're going to have a lot of great celebrity interviews coming up, so I encourage you to click on that notification bell so you can be notified every time we upload a new episode. I'd also like to tell you about a service called HollywoodIsCalling.com. It's a great service that allows you to purchase live phone calls from your favorite celebrities, so check them out. It's something you can buy for yourself or as a gift for someone you know. HollywoodIsCalling.com. Now let's say hello to Kenneth Bombace. Hello, Kenneth. Welcome to the John Ark Show. How are you today, sir?
Excellent. How are you doing, John? Thanks for having me on.
Well, it's our pleasure. So before we begin, I'd like to tell you why we decided to have you on this show. The reason you're here today is that you said something that really impressed us as being very intelligent and strategic from a business perspective. You said that when it comes to dealing with threats to your clients, your priority was not to get into a violent encounter or a fist fight or a shootout with the attackers, but rather to get your client out of the area as quickly as possible. And that's precisely what the Secret Service does with the president. And I think it is a very smart strategy. Is that what you would recommend most people do when they're confronted by a threat in their personal lives?
Oh, of course. I mean, what we call it in the business is getting off the X. It's the first thing you'll learn in the protection business is the X is the location of danger. So if there's danger that's confronts our principals, who the person we call that we're protecting, the first thing we do is get off the X. We're not worried so much about the aftermath. We're worried about getting our principal to safety and then moving forward with getting them to a safe house, getting them to their next destination, not staying and fighting with possible perpetrators. And I'll tell you, it's a big deviation from, say, law enforcement work, which I spent many years in, because that's where we go after the threat. We're gonna address that problem and bring these people to justice. That's not what protection business is. So to answer your question, yes, I think that's a great strategy for anybody. Not to stay and fight. This isn't about having fistfights. This is about getting yourself to safety.
So let's begin with your background. What was it you did earlier in your career and your life that led you to become the CEO of Global Threat Solutions?
So I'll tell you about my background. I'm one of those lucky people, I guess you'd say, that I knew what I wanted to be when I was 5 years old. I knew I wanted to be a soldier, and I knew I wanted to one day be a police officer. And eventually I achieved both of those goals in my life. So at 18 years old, at 17, I enlisted in the U.S. Army in the infantry. And the day after graduation, I deployed to basic and infantry school at Fort Benning. And I deployed right after that to Germany for 2 years. I was there when the Berlin Wall came down, 88 to 90. And while I was in the Army, I was preparing myself for a career in law enforcement, which eventually I started. I came home, went to State University of New York at Stony Brook, got a degree in political science, and then shortly thereafter, I was hired into Suffolk County Sheriff's Office, served about 7 years, and then I moved into one of the largest police departments in the country, where I eventually moved into criminal intelligence and led all protection operations. So where I was located on Long Island, in the Hamptons, I was charged with leading protection operations, which often included Vice President Biden at the time, people like Nancy Pelosi. The Clintons regularly would be out there, and we'd work closely with the Secret Service. So after about 21 years in law enforcement, and by the way, I had a parallel military career too. I exited active duty in 1990, but then I got commissioned and went back into the reserves and served about 11 years in the military. So that culminated with a mission. I led a high-profile mission as a military intelligence captain in 2005 in Samar, Iraq, where I was charged with building a police department there, a city where the police had been overrun. And so I had a full parallel military career during my law enforcement career. And it was after I retired from law enforcement that I ultimately, I had been doing protection operations for over 6 years. And I liked the work, and it's what gave me the idea to form Global Threat Solutions and start my own firm.
Now, you mentioned starting a police force in Iraq. Was that during the war or after the war?
It was during the war. So what had happened is after the invasion, about 2003, the army thought that Samarra, Iraq, had been secured, and they left a Iraqi police force there to provide security to the people of the city. It's a city of about 250,000 people. And then shortly after the U.S. Army pulled out their forces around 2004, the insurgents moved into Samarra. They dragged all the police out into the streets. They killed all of them, and they left the city with no police. And it was in 2005 when I arrived, and I was a military intelligence captain. And because of my law enforcement background on the civilian side, a general had asked me to lead this mission to build a police department in Samarra. And it was very much during the war.
Now, how difficult is it to start a new police force and ask people to sign up to be police officers when all their predecessors were just killed?
It's not easy. So one thing we had going for us is that, many people were left jobless. The country was in turmoil, and it was a good job for an Iraqi male as far as having security and a paycheck. But there were many things that were challenges to us. Many would sign up and they wouldn't want to show up to work. They would just show up the day they were getting paid. So we had to put a stop to that. Then also the police were common targets. So when we would get these Iraqi police, we would send them out of country to Jordan to get them trained, at least to attend a basic academy. And then we would train them, me and my team. But I remember one instance where I had to go up to Tikrit, Saddam's hometown, at a big regional police academy and pick up these police officers and escort them to Baghdad, where they would fly out to Jordan to be trained at the police academy. And we were attacked by not one, but two VBIDs, or vehicle-borne improvised explosive devices. I almost died that day, and it was doing just that, trying to get my police officers safely to Baghdad and fly them out of the country for training. There were many challenges.
What allowed you to survive that attack? Were you wearing a flak vest, or was your vehicle armored?
We had armored vehicles. What I would tell you was a lot of luck. So I had arrived at this. It was right near FOB, or Forward Operating Base Danger, in Tikrit, and it was Regional Police Academy. I had left my Humvees out in the front, and I had went with my executive officer inside to meet with the Iraqi Police Academy commander. And while we were sitting in that office, we were sitting right in front of a window. As soon as we moved away from that window to walk out of his office, there was a massive explosion. And it was a first VBID that went off. Amazing. When we exited the building, there was an Iraqi police officer who had his arm completely severed off. And there was small arms fire coming in. And we had to work our way behind Jersey barriers to get to my people. I feared that they had been possibly killed in this attack. And the shooting was coming from Iraqi police on the other side of the road. There was an explosion, and they thought there was an attack, so they were shooting. We were actually being shot at by Iraqi police. Ultimately, I made it to my Humvees, and I was on the radio calling for a quick reaction force. And amazingly, there was actual cracked, and this is, the armored vehicles, but the windshields were all still cracked, but they were just far enough away at a different angle where nobody was hurt. There was about 11 Iraqi police officers killed in the attack. And what was really amazing about it is I went out to inspect this VBID that went off, this vehicle-borne improvised explosive device, a car bomb. And while I was out there, I had two Apache helicopters that were assigned to me for security to escort these police to Baghdad. And while I was out there, they had notified me there was a second possible VBID, a white sedan. And I was on the radio telling them to shut down the area around this explosion when a second car detonated. I was in the street when that happened, but it was far enough away that I wasn't injured.
From the time you put the call out for the rapid reaction force to the time they arrived, how many minutes do you think that was?
Oh, it was fast. I would say probably 5 minutes because we were right next to fob danger, and they had a team right there at QRF. Plus, there was a convoy, a military police colonel and his team just happened to be traveling past there. And when they heard it go over the radio, they came in too. And that colonel, who had once visited me in Samara, which was a very dangerous place, he saw me and recognized me, and he says, "They called me Captain Bombace over there. That's how my name was originally pronounced. It's Italian, and the Iraqis referred to me as that." So he said that he goes, "You always seem to be where things things are happening. Every time he saw me, there was some type of danger, an attack going on." And it seemed to be the way things rolled for me over there in Iraq. I got involved in many things.
I've got to think that 5 minutes was probably one of the longest 5 minutes of your life. When you're under fire like that, time probably stops.
Yeah, so I would tell you there was, believe it or not, there was firefights and times over there that were worse than that. That we had to deal with while we were there. My post where I lived was very small. I would say in America it was probably about an acre, and it was right in the middle of next to the police station in Samara. And almost on a daily basis, mortar rounds would come in early in the morning. They would set up in the marshes. These insurgents launch them. They're primitive mortars, but so they weren't that accurate, but they would land very close sometimes. And almost on a daily basis, those would come in towards us. So we were in a lawless city at the time.
Now, I grew up in one of the most violent cities in the world. And after a while, hearing gunfire or machine gun fire, it really wasn't a big deal. Did you feel the same way about mortar fire after a while?
That's a great question. So when we first arrived, and the first time those mortars came in early in the morning was always when it was, because they would do like a mission where they would run out there, sneak out there, fire them, and then run away before the army could respond. So the first time it happened, I jumped out of my bunk. I got my XO. I said, "We need a head count. I want to make sure that nobody was hurt." And it was definitely a traumatic experience. And then after about a month in Samara, you'd barely get out of bed that early in the morning when you'd hear those things. It was like even the AK-47s, it was just a regular sound you heard in the city. It was just part of the ambiance of Samara.
Now, I'm sure that when you were starting your company, you evaluated the competitive landscape and you saw many other firms out there that were probably also providing security guards and security services. How did you distinguish your firm from all the other competitors at that time?
So one of the things we always like to tell our clients is that we're 100% veteran owned, our firm. And we take pride in that because we run our company along the same lines as we did as military leaders. We recruit people. Many of them have military experience, and our leadership style is the same style that we used in the military, which we think is highly effective. The same discipline we bring to this business, and also it's in our training, and that we don't get too big. That's a big part of this industry, I think. People, this is like a concierge service, right? These are people that are spending a lot of money on, say, executive protection, celebrity bodyguards, and they want professionalism. They also want to have direct contact with the people providing these services if they have issues or if they have requests. And sometimes companies, if they get too big, like there's some companies that have they're really more security guard companies where they have tens of thousands of employees all across America. When these clients have an issue, they're getting at best a supervisor or maybe an operations manager on the phone. But with my firm, they getting me on the phone when they need me. I oversee directly, they could have direct contact with me, and I oversee all of our operations, all of our contracts at any time. And I think in this business, that's a selling point. People want to know that they have that direct communication and that we're giving them that personal touch that you're simply not going to get from some of these companies that become, for lack of a better word, corporate and large scale.
Which companies are your biggest competitors today?
So I don't want to mention direct Well, I'll tell you this. There's a big company recently that was the biggest, I think, as far as providing specifically executive protection services. And we worked in the past, we have provided services for them when I first started, and that is AS Solution. And AS Solution was not so long ago purchased by a company. And then that company was purchased by an even bigger security company, Allied Universal. So now they're owned by Allied Universal. And I think it's now transitioned to Allied Universal Executive Protection. But I wouldn't listen. I am in no way saying I'm a competitor with Allied Universal. It's a massive international company. I'm just saying that's a big company they formerly, as part of Allied Universal, was the biggest, for as far as I know, EP company or executive protection company in the world, AS Solution. They're no longer called that anymore, though. So in our business, there are lots of smaller regional companies, and then there's some of them that have a reach sort of like we do, which is international. We have an office in Mumbai, we have an office in Los Angeles, New York. We offer services in Europe, and there's a few companies like ours out there.
What is it about your company's services that causes so many politicians, celebrities, and CEOs to decide to hire you instead of your competitors? Because I'm seeing a pattern here.
So again, I think it's how you present yourself, and they want to know that they're going to have professionalism. Again, they're spending a lot of money on these services. It's not inexpensive. And just the fact, those selling points we have. First of all, when we have a client we're going to onboard or someone we're reaching out to or communicating with, it's going to be me who does that. I'm not going to send somebody else. I'm not going to send one of my supervisors or an ops manager. And they like to know they have that personal, direct contact with me. It's me selling. I think my brand and this company, myself and my partner are both military veterans, and we run this company so that our clients have that personal touch that you simply can't get with others. I think that's a big part of it. And also rates do matter. We've learned that in this business. You know, this is a business where we're serving people of high net worth, whether it's a corporate C-suite officer like a CEO, a celebrity, or a family office where these people have a high net worth. People and organizations don't give money away. Money matters to everybody. And we try and be fair too. I have seen companies that they charge double what we charge. And I think that if you offer these professional services, you give them your personal leadership that they're going to have overseeing this, and you give them a fair rate, bring value. That's how we like to say it. Bring value to their organization. I think that's a selling strategy. That's a good strategy to have in this industry.
When do most clients or corporations hire you? Is it after somebody has threatened their lives, or is there some other reason that most clients reach out to you?
That's a good question too. So it can be that. It can be that. Oftentimes when someone hires just for maybe a threat, I see it as short term. In this business, what happens is you have people who need regular security due to the nature of what they do. A celebrity is a great example of that, or an entertainer. And it's because of it's not just their value, their monetary worth, they're so high profile, right? So they attract people. People know who they are. And in this world and in our country, you might even have people who will target somebody because they're famous, right? You'll have somebody, maybe an emotionally disturbed person, and they'll blame someone who's famous, someone they see in social media or on TV for their problems or a problem. And that could be an issue. So they want security. Celebrities, a lot of them have security for that reason. They're high profile and people know them, and they're going to come up to them in the streets. Another big part of this industry, probably bigger really, is companies. All of your Fortune 100 companies, these firms have executive protection usually for their C-suite executives at a minimum. And by executive protection, I mean not only a protection with them while they travel and go to work every day and drive them around and make sure they're getting to and from places safely, but even residential services we provide. Usually the two go hand in hand, where if somebody has executive protection services, they also have residential where we'll do 24-hour security at their residence. Maybe one or maybe more people doing that residential protection. Then another part of this industry is that companies nowadays, these large firms, they put it right in their bylaws. They put it in their bylaws that these top executives will have executive protection services. So it's, in other words, it's no longer up to them. They see them as an asset. You're an asset to this organization, and you will get security because you're filling this role. This role gets security because it's important to us and to the future of our business. So it's in the bylaws, and then whoever's filling that role at that time, they get those services.
Now, I've got more than 100 celebrities on my payroll, and a lot of them live in the New York or California area. And a lot of them have seen their states become very chaotic over the last year because of recent events, political and economic. Some of them are moving out. A lot of them are moving out. Some of them are just choosing to spend more time at their other homes, and some of them are staying, and they're sort of fortifying their lives. Are you seeing those celebrities in states like New York and California increasing their use of security services because of what's happened?
So it's kind of that's a tricky question. People have more fear now because the world is a less stable place, I think, especially over the last year or so. In the United States alone, we saw tremendous civil unrest and people were concerned. However, when you pair that up with the COVID pandemic, people have been traveling. A big part of executive protection, celebrity protection is travel, going from one place to another, whether it be in private jets, whether it be just within New York City or Los Angeles or Miami or in Europe. And people have been traveling so much less that, honestly, I'll tell you, in this industry right now, things are relatively slow compared to the pace that we normally keep. People, a lot of them have hunkered down into, like you said, their second and third homes, maybe in Miami or maybe in Aspen, during the COVID pandemic. And because of that, maybe just they've minimized it to residential security for the most part because they're just not traveling. So we're hoping we anticipate seeing in this industry a spike in services now as the COVID restrictions lift and people start to travel more. And with that, I'll tell you that on the business side of it, I'm not sure you're ever going to see it go to those levels that we did before because, like you had mentioned, people have learned that a lot of these executives, they're running their companies from second and third homes, and it's working. So I'm not sure you're going to see the same level of business travel, but I think on the personal side, it's going to be a big spike because people have been cooped up for over a year now, and they're just waiting for restrictions to lift so that they could get out of their houses and travel the globe.
Now, walk me through the process. Let's say I'm a CEO of a Fortune 1000 firm, and we're shopping for a security services company. What are the considerations that need to be looked at before I pick a company?
So, as I mentioned before, I don't care how big a corporation is or how big the level of net worth a family office has or a celebrity, money's always an issue. Executive protection services can be expensive. To have a team in residential security, $4 million a year is not uncommon. And I'll tell you, for some of the biggest executives in some of the tech firms, that number could reach 20 million in a year. So the services can be expensive. So money always matters. And then there's some things you look for in this business. It's really understanding the protection business. It's discretion is a big part of it. Professionalism, low profile. What people want, especially executives and celebrities in the United States, they want low profile. They don't, if in a perfect world, they don't want people to know they have security. So you have to be able to provide these services without, you see movies sometimes, and they'll be like surrounded around their principal in close proximity. It really doesn't work that way. Not for the most part. The only person you ever really see get those types of services is like the president, right? Because of the threat level. But you want professionalism, discretion, price is always a matter. And then you got to sell yourself. There's a lot of companies out there. You also have to be able to be viable. Can you really provide the services that you say you can? Do you have the agents? Are they trained? Are you licensed? Licensing is a big issue in this business because every single state in America has their own licensing requirements to perform security work. These are some of the issues that will be included in a decision by a potential client of ours.
Who's more difficult to protect, a high-profile celebrity or a billionaire CEO that most people in public wouldn't recognize if they saw him?
So I'll tell you that I would say a celebrity would be more difficult. And I'm not putting down celebrities and saying they're more difficult people. It's because of how high profile they are. Everybody knows them, or a lot of people know them. And you're going to have that constant interaction in public. When you're traveling and you're bringing them from one place to another, you're going to have people try and confront them all the time. And that makes for a little bit of a challenge. Then on the corporate side, like you said, except for your top business leaders, right? The ones who are celebrities themselves in their own right because of the nature, the ones we all see on TV all the time. Aside from them, many of the people getting services, no one knows who they are. So you want to really keep a low profile presence with them. Security can make someone who doesn't have the proper skill set, they can bring attention to a client rather than reduce it or keep them safe in a low profile manner. You don't want to be responsible for that. Creating a good example of this is I had somebody who contacted me once for protection in Mexico. And they said, I'm traveling to Mexico, my entire family, it was 20 plus people, and they wanted protection services. And ultimately, after I did an assessment, a security assessment on this executive, where they were going, the threat level there. And I wanted to keep it a relatively small presence because in Mexico, I thought that he would be bringing more attention to himself by having a big security presence than not, because nobody was going to know who he was, and I didn't want to be creating a problem where there was none.
So when actor John Belushi was reportedly dealing with his substance abuse issues, at one point in his career, a bodyguard was hired for him. And one of the bodyguard's responsibilities was keeping drug dealers away from John. Do you ever have clients who are more of a danger to themselves than the threats posed to them by outsiders?
I would say not to that level, but I would say that you always walk a line. It's a balancing act where you're protecting discretion. We're not going to be involved in anything illegal. I'll tell you that. My company's not going to be involved in anything illegal. But nowadays, especially as you know, in many states, for instance, cannabis is legal and people will be using that around them. That's a consideration when operating with people. So discretion is big. We want people to know that they can be comfortable being themselves around us and not being judged. Where we draw the line is, like I mentioned, we're not going to be involved in any criminal activity for sure. Not my firm.
So actor Kevin Costner famously played a bodyguard with Whitney Houston in the movie. By the way, have you ever met him?
I have not.
Okay. Well, I saw some footage of him moving around in public, no security at all. And he was mobbed at the airport. And I was just sort of amazed. I thought now this footage was a couple of years old, and I don't know if that's still the case, but I'm always sort of surprised by that.
Right. And you will see that. Amazing that you'll see some people so high profile still travel by themselves and won't use security. But I'll tell you, oftentimes it might just be that they didn't have security at that time. Maybe they don't have a full-time 24/7 presence, but they use it. And what might have been something he expected to be a low profile move where people might not realize turned out that's exactly why we exist, because that could happen very quickly. And for the most part, people will be positive, but it just takes one person, maybe somebody who's emotionally disturbed or somebody who was violent, that could target and you could have an incident. So that's a great selling point for firms like ours. And as a side note, I would say it's not always, I like to say this in our training, we're not always there. A very small part, actually, of what we're there is to prevent an assassination, right? That's what people always think about when they think of bodyguards and executive protection and the Secret Service. A lot of what we do is logistics. We're getting people safely, of course, but we're getting people from one place to another. It's a lot of logistical planning that goes into this. Air travel, ground travel, appointments. We got to get to places before they do, days before sometimes, and coordinate what entrance are they coming in? Where's the closest safe house? What if we have to get to a hospital? Where's the closest level 1 trauma center? We have all this determined way before our principal arrives. All that work has to happen before we do security. Plus, a big part of it is it might not be an assassination. It might be just embarrassment. Top executives, celebrities, they also don't want to be embarrassed and have something happen that could damage their reputation in public. You know, I've mentioned this in previously. There's a famous incident that took place with Bill Gates, where someone threw a pie at him and he got hit and he was covered with it. That's bad. And when you're doing somebody's security, that's not something you want to happen to your principal. So there's so many different things. Just tripping and falling can be a big problem, right? It's not all assassins. That's definitely what we're prepared for. But there's so much more that goes into this line of work.
Have you seen that video on YouTube of Arnold Schwarzenegger down in South America? He's surrounded by these South American bodyguards. And this little kid runs up from behind and kicks him in the back. Talk about a
drop kick them.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. And I'll tell you, in our industry and on LinkedIn and with associates of mine, that went around like wildfire because that's what we do. That is a problem. Arnold's a big guy and he's very stable and barely budged him. But the point is, he got drop kicked. That's what we call an epic failure in this business. And that, you asked me earlier, when someone picks a firm, those are the types of things you're looking at. Are they looking at everything? Are they even vetting people who might be in close proximity to somebody? Are they looking at scenarios like that? What if someone comes right now? It's not an easy business. You can't have a tight 360 around your principal. They don't want it. But you have to make sure something like that can't happen either. So you have to have a plan for everything.
I used to work as a producer for the biggest, I'm not going to name the names, but the biggest female TV talk show host in the world. She is one of the wealthiest women in the world. And I was always amazed by her security. She's a billionaire, and the security was almost non-existent. And I thought, wow, that is such a risky situation to put yourself in. You know, that was years ago. I don't know what her security is like now, but it amazed me at the time. Just amazed.
Right.
So
I don't talk about clients. I will tell you that I think I know who you're talking about without mentioning names. And I'll say that I believe that security posture has increased dramatically.
Yeah. Hopefully.
Yep.
So Lady Gaga's dog walker was recently shot on camera by someone who wanted to steal her dogs. By the way, I'm sure you've probably seen the video. It's painful to watch because the guy's shot repeatedly and he's just laying on the sidewalk screaming. Rapper Dr. Dre's house was recently broken into while he was in the hospital. Lebron James has hired security to protect his home. Do you think that these are examples of how the world is getting more dangerous by the day? It seems like it is.
So, yeah, those are high profile ones, so we hear about them. I would say that the short answer is yes. I mean, even if we just want to look at statistics, especially near urban areas, we've seen crime in the last year has spiked in a lot of areas. Plus, in addition to, I guess, for lack of a better term, traditional crime, again, we've seen some civil unrest, which can unfold very quickly. And it's a little bit of an unnerving feeling knowing, and we got a lot of calls for this, especially on residential side. It's an unnerving feeling when this civil unrest kicks in and a police station's taken over. Even the police are unable to control it. That's when people are concerned about relying on their own security at that point because they're worried. What if someone doesn't come when I call and something bad like this happens? So to answer your question, yes, I'd say the world is definitely a less stable place based on what we've seen occur over the last year.
So I'm also hearing now that some celebrities won't sleep with a person until that individual first consents on video to having sex willfully and intentionally, and they waive all the rights to making a future sexual harassment claim or a rape claim. Are you seeing this sort of thing more in celebrity circles?
So I'll tell you this, we're not involved with that side of it. I have heard about those. Non-disclosure agreements are very common. I mean, we don't do detail for somebody without a non-disclosure agreement. Privacy is a big issue, and I have heard about these agreements. It's not something we get involved with, but definitely. I mean, it's a litigious world. There's accusations being made against people all the time, and especially high-profile people. They're concerned about it.
What percentage of your business is domestic and what percentage is offshore?
Oh, I would say, I don't have the number exactly, but the majority of it is domestic. I would go with 70-30.
Okay. And how dangerous is it for those of your clients that are offshore? How dangerous is it and difficult is it to provide security in places like Mexico or South America that just have so much crime?
Yeah. So as I mentioned before, the key with that is in this business is developing reliable assets in those areas. If you are a company like mine and your client says, hey, we're going to India, we're going to fly into Mumbai, or we're going to Mexico, or we're going to Brazil, and you think you're going to pick up a phone and call someone, like, of course, we would have our agents travel with them, but you always want to have in place what we call local assets. It might be drivers and vehicles. It's the way it works. You have to rely on that. And if you think you're going to pick up a phone 3 days before they travel, and you're going to be able to rely on a company you just found to provide those services, that's a big mistake in this business. That's how you could fail. These strategic alliances with local assets in key areas around the world, those have to be developed way before you have a request for security, long before that. You have to have a strong partnership so that you have someone who's reliable, you could trust, working close with your agents to protect your principal when they travel to these hotspots, these regions.
If you were living in the US in some crime-ridden city and you wanted to move somewhere safer, what city or state would you move your family to these days? Is that an answerable question, or is it too generalized?
It might be generalized just in the sense that, everybody assumes a certain amount of risk because there's other things important to where they live, right? I mean, we could all say, hey, let's pack up and we'll go to Wyoming and Montana, which I would actually love. I love the mountains. But I'll say that, people have businesses and things keeping them in other areas, and also other people. Right now, New York City has high crime rate, but people who live there love New York City, and there's things about it that just you can't get anywhere else. And that plays a factor in where people live. If security were only a factor, that's the only issue, then I guess you would want to move to a state with a lower population where you could have standoff distance and be on 5 or 10 acres and have security in place. As far as that goes, I don't know if I would move to a state just based on security, but definitely within that state, the area I move, I would consider crime rates for sure.
What about moving abroad? A lot of people, not a lot, but a number of people are moving abroad just because of all these considerations. Are there parts of the world that you consider to be generally a little safer than others?
Of course. I mean, I would say that Europe is a pretty safe bet. Any urban area, you could have higher crime rates. You're going to see that around the world, right? But Europe also has modern policing systems, and as important is modern judicial systems and courts, things you could rely on, right? That are important when you're controlling crime, not just the police, and also security services. Companies like mine, we have partners we're working with right now in Europe too, who have companies like mine that provide excellent services. Those are things you'd want to consider. If we're talking about like one of my clients moving abroad, they would want to look at those things for sure. But as a safe bet, I would say Europe definitely. There's other areas that are safe too.
What kind of qualities and capabilities and skill sets do you look for when you hire security people?
So you'd be surprised. Some people, a layman might look and they see, they think someone's got to be 6'6" and 260 pounds and they're a bodyguard, right? And that's an image. That's why we don't really use the term bodyguard. It's funny. Some companies, you have to advertise using that as a keyword as well as executive protection, because quite frankly, a lot of people don't know what executive protection is. They don't really know, which is probably one of the reasons I'm on this show, right? To talk about it. But they, we don't look for someone like that necessarily. Look, if somebody's athletic and large and strong, that's great. But this is a thinking person sport, executive protection. So you need someone who's a great communicator. You can deal with people to diffuse situations before they occur, build relationships with places where your client's going to be going to visit, management and liaison with people. You have to be able to think in a moment's notice and change your course, your plans. You will have spent 3 days driving routes, developing a plan and a strategy for a certain visit. And as you're driving, your principals say, you know what, I changed my mind. We're going to go 3 hours away. I want to go visit with a friend. And everything has to change like that. And you need to be able to adjust fire, stay calm, and make that mission work. So we need someone who's the full package, good communication skills, intelligent, maintains calm, which is probably the most important thing. And then also they do have to be physically capable. If it's an armed position, they need to be competent with their firearm just in case that is needed in a situation. Those things are important, but we need everything.
So we did some research and we found that Facebook reportedly spends over $20 million a year to protect Mark Zuckerberg. Is that common for a CEO at his level?
Well, to answer that question, I'd say I'm not sure there's many CEOs at his level.
Right.
We have Fortune 100 companies, and then you have Facebook, and you have Google, and you have Amazon, right? And I say that I'm not crunching numbers about gross revenues. I'm saying that because of their high-profile nature. So, first of all, obviously, Facebook's a very successful firm, right? So they have a lot of revenue coming in, but also Mr. Zuckerberg's a very high-profile person. That's one of those. He's a celebrity CEO, right? So he's going to be much more high-profile, much more at risk than a CEO of a large company, but just that no one really knows, right? So me personally, I'm a security professional by nature. When I hear that number, I don't think it's that much. And I know that sounds crazy, but when you look at how much Facebook is grossing and you look at how high profile he is and what he is kind of the brand, I don't really think it's that much to spend on his security.
So we recently interviewed actor Pepe Serna, who played Angel in the movie Scarface with Al Pacino. He was the guy who got his arm cut off with a chainsaw in the shower scene. That's the scene everybody remembers him from.
Yeah.
There's another famous scene in the movie in which Tony Montana is yelling at Manny for not paying enough attention to his security problems and not noticing the strange van parked down the street. At one point, Tony complains about all the money he's spending on counter surveillance. How much do you think is reasonable, is an industry average for an ultra high net worth individual to spend on security for their home and their business? Like, what's the range? What would you guess the range would be?
All right. So ultra high net worth, and they're going to have residential and executive protection.
Yes.
I would, it all varies, but I would say you're definitely spending between $2 to $4 million a year. I mean, again, Facebook is on the extreme, right? Because of the high profile nature. And also it's a very successful company with a lot of travel involved, movements involved. But I would say 2 to 4 million definitely is what somebody would be spending. That's totally reasonable to have a full-time presence. And that could vary. It depends how many homes you have security at. It depends how many agents you have assigned to. Is it just a driver and one agent? It depends how, every person is billable hours and it adds up quickly. So I would say 2 to 4 million would be more of an average for someone in that situation than at that very high level, like 20 million.
Tell me about some of the dangerous situations you and your people have encountered over the years. Is there one or two situations that really stick out in your mind?
We've had one where we had we had one of our clients at a large sporting event in Las Vegas, and a melee, for lack of a better word, a melee ensued after it was a UFC fight. Big, huge, massive fight broke loose. In the audience too, And as is common with people typical to our principals, that he was in close proximity to the ring, and we had to have a plan in place to get him out of that place very quickly. And we did it successfully. But you have to have planning in place, vehicle stage, when everyone's trying to get out in a scenario like that. So you have to maintain calm and have a plan in place. We had agents in the building with them, so we were able to do that. That's one. I've also had a scenario where where I was actually working on a detail with some other agents, where we had a stalker get right into a green room within feet of our principal, and it wasn't any fault of ours or any lack of due diligence. This person was able to attain legitimate press credentials and got through the access at a venue. When you're providing security for someone, you're sort of you're protecting that principal, but you're not necessarily providing the security in that venue, and you don't dictate the security procedures there. So sometimes that can be a challenge. We handled it successfully. But the person was identified, and the police were contacted. But to have someone who is a known entity, we didn't know this was a known entity. We were not provided that intelligence. We were contracted for a short period of time, and to have someone who's a known entity to this principle get that close was it's one of the reasons companies like ours exist.
Generally speaking, who gets more death threats? Political clients, CEOs, or celebrities?
I don't have those numbers in front of me, but I'll talk from my experience, because I used to work closely in the counterpart program with the Secret Service when I was a detective providing these services. And obviously, national level politicians, they get a lot of threats, especially when you're talking vice president or president. Those threats come in high volume. I would say celebrities then would be the next ahead of executives. As I mentioned before, many executives, they may have some workplace violence threats and things of that nature, but many people don't know them. It's only those top tier celebrity CEOs, they go into that level of celebrity where they're going to attract the attention of unstable people who might send threats to them, because they see them. They're on social media, they're on TV, they're on the news, and they're famous. So they may get a higher level. So I would say probably, top politicians and celebrities are in that same level, really A-list celebrities that people know. And then you would go to your executives who would be below them, except for those celebrity executives who, for better or worse, they attract attention just like a celebrity does, and sometimes, some cases, even more.
Have you ever had a criminal group try to hire your services, or people that you thought may have been criminals?
I'll just say, for the short answer is yes. People that I did not feel comfortable providing services to, and I wouldn't put my agents in that position, and I won't be involved with it.
Let's say you're a single parent out there working really hard, trying to raise your kids, but you live in a really horrific neighborhood, lots of crime, lots of gang activity, and you don't have the resources to move out. You can't get away from it. You're stuck, like so many people are. What kind of recommendations can you make? What kind of advice can you give to somebody in that position?
Yeah, so I would say situational awareness is probably a big thing. I mean, wherever you live, having security, nowadays security can be affordable at the lowest level, right? So we have things like Ring. You could put on your front door that you could have on your phone at any given time, that you could see who's there. It'll alert you even when you're not home. Things like that are very affordable nowadays, right? So that's security surveillance has become available to the masses because it's mass produced and it's effective now. The quality is actually very good for these systems. The other thing I would say is situational awareness, where be aware of your surroundings all the time. Be aware of where crimes are taking place and when they're taking place. Select your path or your route to certain places to avoid problems in the first place. Prevention is really where it's at. Make common sense decisions and just be aware. Situational awareness would be my number one suggestion. And of course, those those now very affordable measures you could take that are a great deterrent, where people know that there's video cameras or a security system. It could really be a great deterrent for something occurring around your residence.
What do you believe will lead to the fastest growth of your company, in the next 5 years? Is it increasing the size of your staff? Is it incorporating more technology into your business practices? Where do you think the highest growth will be derived?
Right. So there's a few strategies that we've put in place just recently that we're moving forward with. One of them is we see a greater role for us providing short-term support to corporate executive protection. A lot of these big companies like Facebook, because we've mentioned them, they have in-house protection people, and then they also will contract companies like ours to support them when they're traveling in different locations. And we have a whole business line we're launching that's going to focus just on that. We're going to focus on that short-term support for in-house executive protection, bodyguards for celebrities, corporations, family offices. And that's one thing. We see a growth potential there. Another thing is to adjust with the times. Right now with COVID, we have implemented really strong COVID protocol. Even when the COVID restrictions lift, people are still spooked. People are scared. They don't know when the next one happens. They don't want to bringing in outside people near their family and their employees if they don't feel comfortable. So we've implemented really strict COVID protocol with testing and us disinfecting vehicles and masks, of course, and making sure our clients feel safe with all of our agents, no matter where they are. That's another thing that we're working towards. We're trying to adjust to what we see as the needs of them. They want to keep their details close to them so that they don't have a high turnover with agents and people, but they're going to need that support when they're traveling around the world for sure. And they want reliable, they want, if possible, deal with the same company as they travel to give them that reliable, steady professional services.
Well, before we wrap things up, is there anything you would like to promote?
It's something you asked me in the beginning. Why would someone want to use our company? We're careful not to get too big, and we're careful not to get so big that my clients can't pick up the phone and get me at any time and say, I have an issue, there's a problem, or I need some more security, or hey, something just happened. We will never get too big for my clients not to be able to get in touch with me at any time. Plus, I think it is important that we're a veteran-owned company, and we've built that military ethos right into our corporate strategy. I think we have the same morals and ethics and discipline that we've learned in military leadership with our company. A lot of people like to use military veteran-owned firms too. So I would just promote our firm as one that's reliable, brings great value to their companies. We definitely don't gouge our clients. We like to offer our services at fair rates and we never let up on our standards. Our training programs for our agents is comprehensive, and we sell ourselves with what we've started this company on, professional services that bring value to your company.
If people want to reach out to you, what's the name of your website?
globalthreatsolutions.com. They can learn all about our company there, and they can contact me directly there too.
Excellent. Well, Ken, it's been a real pleasure having you on the John Ark Show. I want to wish you continued success and congratulate you on the great work you're doing. I forecast that during the next few years, your industry is going to explode with growth. Thank you for coming on the show, and you are always welcome back, sir.
Excellent. Thanks, John. It was a pleasure. I was really enjoying being on your show today.
Thank you very much. So once again, I want to thank our viewers for watching and tell you that we're going to have more great celebrity interviews coming up and more breaking news stories in the future. So we encourage you to subscribe to our channel and click on that notification bell so you get notified every time we post a new story. Thank you, and we will see you soon.